Before we get to today's presentation, I have to take a moment for some shameless self-promotion. On March 9th and 10th, 2019, some of the crew and I will be doing a personal appearance at the gun show at the Polk County Fairgrounds in Rick Riall, Oregon. We'll have a table with some guns displayed. A lot of people have asked about t-shirts. We'll have some of the prototypes on hand. We'd love to get some input, and depending on what input we get, we'll decide which ones will or won't go into production. Also, a lot of people have asked about the cars. We'll have those there too. Should be a lot of fun. Okay, let's get to today's presentation. Hi, we're out on the range today, so please bear with gunfire here in the background. And today we're going to be shooting the Herter's Select Defense double round ball 12 gauge ammunition. A viewer sent it to me and asked me to test it, so here we are. And let's start with a close-up of what this ammo looks like. As I've said before, there's a vast array of different types of shot shells on the market, but these three are by far the most common. Birdshot, there's many varieties, but it's a high number of small pellets used for hunting birds or small game. Buckshot, again many varieties, but it's a much lower number of much larger pellets used for anti-personnel purposes or hunting larger game like deer, hence the name buckshot. Slugs, again many varieties, but what is by far the most common is the rifled slug, sometimes called a Foster slug. Now the Herter's Select Defense ammunition is a 12 gauge shell loaded with two 65 caliber lead spheres, like the old pumpkin ball slugs, and they're carried in this shot cup as they go down the barrel. Now that we've seen what this ammunition looks like, the question is how will it compare with conventional slugs and buckshot in terms of accuracy, power, and effectiveness? Well, let's shoot some and see what we can learn. I want to start with a discussion of accuracy and hit probability. And I'm going to do a demonstration that I've done before, forgive the redundancy, but I'm going to do it again for the benefit of those who are just tuning in for the first time. Now, I've got a silhouette set up here with a 17 1/4 inch shoot and see center, and I'm going to shoot it with my Mossberg Model 500, which has a 20-inch improved cylinder bore barrel. And the ammunition I'm going to start with is Winchester 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch double-aught buck 9 pellet. That's 9 .33 caliber spheres. And I'll shoot this target from 25 yards, and let's see what kind of pattern we get. I was aiming at the center of the target, and we see just about all of the impacts are above that, so that tells me that with this particular ammunition, this shotgun pattern's a little bit high. But we see that of the 9 pellets, 6 are on the shoot and see center, 2 just above it, and 1 barely missing the silhouette. So 8 out of 9 pellets hitting the intended target would have been a very effective hit. Also, the size of our pattern shows us that even if I'd been off target a little bit, some of the pellets would still have been on the silhouette. And it's that pattern spread that allows shotguns to increase your hit probability. Now let me paste up these shot holes, and I'll go back and try this shot again from 50 yards, and let's see what kind of results we get. At 25 yards, I fired 1 shot, that's 9 pellets, 8 of which hit the intended target. At 50 yards, I fired 2 shots, that's 18 pellets, and we only got 3 on the shoot and see center plus 2 peripheral hits. So instead of 8 out of 9, we had 5 out of 18. Because at 50 yards, that pattern has spread out so much that it's significantly diminishing your hit probability. In fact, under some circumstances, a pattern that big might start endangering things you didn't want to shoot. So I'll go back and shoot from 50 yards again, but this time I'll load with the Winchester 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch 1 ounce rifled slug, and let's see what kind of hits I can get. With the slugs, I fired 5 rounds, but they knocked off a couple of the pasties covering buckshot impacts. So the 5 impacts were 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, not necessarily in that order. And this one that's off, that's just me. And again, we see that my gun pattern's a little bit high. But that's me shooting a smoothbore shotgun with no sights, just a bead, at 50 yards offhand. So I'd say that it looks like the slugs greatly enhance your hit probability at 50 yards over buckshot. And that brings us to the topic of our Herter's Select Defense double ball ammunition. Will those two .65 caliber projectiles spread out and act like buckshot and not be very effective? Or will they act like slugs except being twice as good because you have two projectiles instead of just one? Let me put up a new target and I'll shoot the Herter's ammunition from 50 yards and see what kind of results we get. With our Herter's Select Defense ammunition, at 50 yards I fired 5 rounds and we see 5 impacts. 4 on the target and 1 clear out here on the cardboard. That seems odd since there were 10 projectiles, but some of these impacts look like they're double impacts, as if those 2 projectiles didn't spread out at all. We also see that with the conventional slugs, with the center aim point I was a little high. Now I'm quite a bit lower. Different guns will have different results, but this does show us that the point of impact of this ammunition might be very different than with other types of ammunition. We also see that the group isn't nearly as good as with the conventional slugs. So far this ammo looks a little disappointing. Let's try this same drill of 5 rounds again at 25 yards and see what happens. And there you have it, 5 shots, 5 impacts, so it would appear that our second projectile has not started separating in the least, although our accuracy at 25 yards seems to be a little better than at 50. But with no separation whatsoever of the 2 projectiles, makes me ask the question, why bother having a second projectile? I've got a new target set up, and it seems we're having a problem with separation of projectile from shot cup. But would we get any better separation if we shot this ammunition through a shotgun with a full choke barrel? Well, I've got my Rock Island Armory VR60 with the full choke tube inserted. Let's shoot the Herter's ammunition through this at 50 yards and see if we can get any different result. I have to hold the cardboard up so the wind doesn't blow it over. Now I fired 5 rounds, so that should have been 10 projectiles, and I count 9 impacts on the target. So it would appear that using a full choke shotgun can make a difference as far as projectile and shot cup separation. But I also have to point out that that ammunition is labeled on the box Select Defense, implying that it is intended to be used for home defense or personal protection purposes. And although the VR60 does have a full choke tube that I can install in the barrel, most shotguns that people are using for those purposes do have cylinder bore or improved cylinder bore barrels. Now I want to discuss the power of this ammunition. I've got the chronograph set up at 5 yards. Typically I shoot at 7, but for this ammo I'm going to shoot at 5. And let's see what kind of velocities we get. Oh, and reminder everybody, this is an earplug case. I wear earplugs with every shot I take. 918, 906, 912, 902, and 926. Now let's see how that compares to conventional 1-ounce rifled slugs. And now we'll shoot our Winchester Super X 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch 1-ounce rifled slug. $14.71, $15.43, $14.50, 1474, and 1500. Now you notice that slight hiccup. I don't think that's a malfunction as much as it is my cold hand not gripping the slide correctly. But let's go crunch the numbers. Well, I crunched the numbers, and of course it comes with the caveats that chronographs don't always agree with each other, and certain environmental factors, including but not limited to elevation and ambient temperature, can affect chronograph results. I also have to point out that the results I got were significantly less than the manufacturer's advertised velocities printed on the box. And there's some reasons for that, such as chronographs don't always agree with each other, and the test guns that these manufacturers used were probably different than the gun I used, and manufacturers' advertised velocities can sometimes be optimistic. But all that having been said, with the Herter's ammunition I got a mean velocity of 912 feet per second. That's 288 feet per second less than the advertised velocity printed on the box. With the Winchester ammunition I got a mean velocity of 1,487 feet per second. That's only 113 feet per second less than the 1,600 they advertise, and it's 575 feet per second more than the Herter's. That's a lot more. But how much more performance will we really get out of that much more velocity? Let's see if I can put that to the test. Now I've got 3 of our $2 concrete blocks, and I'll shoot from 10 yards with my Mossberg 500 with its 20-inch improved cylinder bore barrel, and I'll shoot the target on your left with 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch double-aught buck 9 pellet, the target in the center with 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch 1-ounce rifled slug, and the target on the right with 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch Herter's Select Defense double ball ammunition, and let's see how the results compare. So when it comes to smashing concrete blocks, it looked like our buckshot was a little less effective, but I couldn't see much difference between the slugs and the double ball ammunition. Let's try something else. In shooting the concrete blocks, we saw that there was very little difference in the effectiveness between the 1-ounce slug and our Herter's double ball ammunition. So we can take it as axiomatic that if we shot the meat target with those same 2 ammunitions, that we would have very little difference, probably not enough for us to see. But we're going to shoot the meat target anyway for no other reason than because it's fun. And for those who haven't seen it before, the meat target is leather jacket skin, followed by pork steak pectorals, pork ribs, a bag of oranges to simulate lung tissue, more pork ribs on the back, 4 layers of t-shirt on the front, 4 layers on the back, and the whole thing followed by the new and improved high-tech fleece bullet stop. And I'm going to shoot from 7 yards with a Mossberg 590 shotgun, and I'll start with the Winchester 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch 1-ounce rifled slug. It's important to note that I said I was starting with the 1-ounce rifled slug. I didn't. I actually shot this target with the Herter's Select Defense double ball ammunition. And the results we got were a big hole in our pork chop pectoral, big hole in our ribs on the front, another big hole in the ribs on the back, and would you believe it, where the projectile hit a rib, shattered it. But the really interesting thing is that these 2 projectiles, still acting as one at this point, went through every single layer of fleece and several feet into the snow behind me, and I couldn't find the projectile. So the real result we have here is basically a .65 caliber hole through our meat target and a great deal of penetration. So I'll put together a new meat target and we'll try this again, and this time I really will shoot it with our Winchester 1-ounce rifled slug. Well, our pork steak pectoral has a big hole in it. There's the hole in the ribs on the front of the target. Our orange lung tissue is just devastated. There's a big hole in the ribs on the back of the target. And would you believe that slug was stopped by the first layer of fleece? Let me show you what's left of it. And here's the major fragments of that 12 gauge slug. Now there's one more thing to add, and that is that although I don't consider it necessary to wear eye pro when shooting paper targets or using the chronograph, I most certainly do wear safety glasses when shooting concrete blocks or the meat target. I just usually take them off before I get back on camera. Now that having been said, what's the takeaway from all of this today? Well, when using the chronograph, we saw that the Herter Select Defense double ball ammunition had significantly lower velocity than our conventional 1-ounce slug. It also seemed to have significantly less accuracy when shooting it at 50 yards. And what we really saw was that those two projectiles had trouble separating from the shot cup, and it performed really poorly in our improved cylinder bore barrel. Although using a full choke shotgun seemed to alleviate that problem a little bit. Now, when we shot the concrete blocks, it seemed to perform pretty well. But when shooting the meat target, although it had a great deal of penetration, the effectiveness on the target itself paled in comparison to the conventional 1-ounce Foster slug. So it looks like the bottom line is, if you're shooting at just the right range, at just the right target, with just the right shotgun, there might be some applications for this double ball ammunition, but for the most part you'd probably be a lot better off to just stick to a conventional 1-ounce Foster slug. So as always, don't try this at home. I'm what you call a professional, and thanks for watching the Herter's Select Defense double ball ammunition video.